Today we're going to learn the x and y, find the x and y intercepts of a graph.
Today we're going to learn to graph using the slope-intercept form of an equation. Now you learned, like we said in 6th and 7th grade, that this axis right here is the x-axis, and this one going up and down is the y-axis. Okay? The two things you need to learn in the beginning of this lesson are, what is the x-intercept? What is the y-intercept? Okay? The definition of the x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. Alright, so like we said, the x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. The y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay, so now let's work over here to our graph. In our graph, I'm going to draw us, this is our coordinate plane, and on our coordinate plane, I'm going to draw us a graph. There's a graph. Okay, now, do you see that this graph right here, this is the graph, and what does it do? It crosses the x-axis right here and the y-axis right there, doesn't it? So now the x-intercept is going to be this point right here. The x-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the x-axis. If this is the x-axis, this is the point where it crosses the x-axis. So what is the x-intercept equal? X equals -2. You see at -1, -2, the graph crosses the x-axis. So the x-intercept is -2, and that's how you got to write your answer. X equals -2. Now the y-intercept is the point where the graph crosses the y-axis. What is the y-intercept? -3. See, starting at 0, -1, -2, -3. This is the point where it crosses the y-axis. So the y-intercept is -3. So my x-intercept is -2. My y-intercept is -3. Now, on this coordinate plane, the whole screen that you see here, guys, is the coordinate plane. This line going left to right is the x-axis. The one going up and down is the y-axis. Okay? This blue line is your graph. The question asks, what is the x-intercept and what is the y-intercept? Well, the x-intercept is the point where it crosses the x-axis. So where does the blue line cross this x-axis? Right here at -1, 2, 3, 4. -4. So x equals -4. Now where does it cross the y-axis? Well, right there. So what does y equal? +4. So your x-intercept is -4. Your y-intercept is +4. Alright, here's our last example for intercept. You see this graph crosses the y-axis and the x-axis. But it's a little different. It crosses the y-axis at what?
3.
So our y-intercept is 3 because it crosses the y-intercept at, or the y-axis at 3. But now it crosses the x-axis in between 0 and what? 1. Is it kind of in the middle? So we'll say the x-intercept is what? A half, or 0.5. Okay? So your y-intercept, 3. X-intercept, it's a half because it goes in between 0 and 1. Today we're going to learn to graph using the slope-intercept form of an equation. In our lesson, we're going to take this equation right here and we're going to graph it without a t-chart in less than 10 seconds. Okay, using a t-chart took us a good while. Now we're going to do it without a t-chart. Now this is our base equation, y equals mx plus b. This is called slope-intercept form. Now the number next to x is the slope, okay, m. Well, on that equation up there, what is the slope?
-8.
No. Whenever there's not a number in front of the x, it's always understood to be 1. So the slope here, m, equals -1 over 1, because slope is always written as a ratio or a fraction. So the slope in this case is -1 over 1, and the y-intercept is 1. Now the way you graph this equation is to take your y-intercept and just go up or down. So on B, you always go up or down. Okay, well it's positive, so you go up, and then from that point you do rise over run. -1 is the rise, 1 is the run. -1 is the rise, so you go down 1, and then you run to the right 1. There's your 2 points. Now if you connect those 2 points and continue on forever, just like that, you have just graphed this equation using the slope and the y-intercept. Alright, now we have a new equation. Okay, remember we're graphing using the slope and the y-intercept. Two things. We are graphing using the slope and the y-intercept. If we're graphing using the slope and the y-intercept, we need to identify what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. Remember, the slope is the number next to x. Y equals mx plus b. So what is the slope? 2/3. And what's the y-intercept? -4. You got to make sure you say the negative. Now the way you graph it is always start with the b, going up and down. Since it's the y-intercept and this is the y-axis, you got to put it somewhere on this axis. You go down 1, 2, 3, 4. Why did I go down? Because it's negative. Now the rise is 2 and the run is 3. So I rise 2 and run 3. From this point, you don't start back at the 0. You go from the point that you plotted. Now once you got your 2 points, you connect them with a line that continues on forever. And this right here is the graph of this equation. Alright, we're graphing these using the slope and the y-intercept. No longer using a t-chart. We're saving time and we're graphing using the slope and the y-intercept. That means I have to identify what the slope is and I have to identify what the y-intercept is. In this case, the slope is -1/2. And remember, whenever you have a negative out front, the negative always goes with the top number. And the y-intercept is +2. So now from 0, 0, the origin, you do the y-intercept first by going up 2 and plotting a point. From there, you do your rise over run, your slope. Now your rise is -1, so you go down 1 and you run 2. So there are your 2 points. I'm going to connect them. And I just made a graph of this equation right here using my slope, which is m, and my y-intercept, which is b. Alright, our next example asks us to graph using the slope and the y-intercept. That means I have to identify the slope. In this case, the slope is 3, but we don't just write 3, we write 3/1, because you have, in slope, you always use a fraction or ratio. Your y-intercept is -2. Remember, you have, if you got a minus sign, you got to bring it along. So now from 0, 0, I do the y-intercept first, then the slope. And the y-intercept's -2, I go down 2. Then from there I go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 1. Okay, now I've got to connect those two. And in less than 10 seconds, we just graph that equation using the slope and the y-intercept. Later in your homework, you're going to get a problem just like this. Okay? Now, this equation is in standard form, and it's got to be in the form slope-intercept like this. Now, what's the difference in these two equations? This one has x and y on the same side. This one has y by itself. We need to get y by itself. The way you do that is to move the x over here. Well, this is -2x, so you're going to add 2x on each side. Now, when you add 2x, this goes away, leaving you the equation right there. Y equals 3 plus 2x. Then all you have to do here is identify your slope equals your slope is always the number next to x. So it's 2/1. And your y-intercept is 3. And then you graph it the same way. Okay? Alright, here's another example where the equation is in standard form and we got to put it in slope-intercept. The way we do that is to move 4x to the right side. It's positive, so we're going to subtract 4x on each side. Now, this goes away, leaving me y equals -2 minus 4x. My slope equals -4/1. because your slope always has to be a fraction, and my y-intercept is negative 2. Okay? Remember, the slope is always the number next to x. Now to graph this, I do my y-intercept negative 2, and then I go down 4 more because my rise is negative 4 and my run is 1. And then I'm going to connect these 2 points. And there's the graph of the equation 4x plus y equals negative 2. Alright, so today we learned what an x-intercept was. We learned what a y-intercept was. We also learned to graph using the slope-intercept form. And we learned how to graph using the x and y-intercept.